Hello, everyone. Welcome to Anonymous Addiction, My Truth About AA. This is Bobby C., and I'll be your host today. We're going to be talking about tradition 4, fourth tradition. We did 1, 2, and 3. We're doing short ones, so let's get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Tradition 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. Now, each group should be autonomous. Look up the definition of autonomous: the right or condition of self-governing, is independent in one's thoughts or actions, a state of independence, self-determination in an individual or group or society, right? But then it goes on in the step book and it says, but except in matters affecting other groups or other AA as a whole. So how can it be autonomous? How can it be autonomous if there's conditions upon it, put upon it? So in other words, if you're not abiding by group conscience, which we're going to get into, because let's see, I'm going to read it out of the big book. You've got the short version and you have the long version. And our membership ought to include all who suffer from, oops, that's 3. 4, with respect to our own affairs, each AA group should be responsible to no other authority than its own conscience. Now remember this, conscience. When they're talking about conscience, they're always talking about group conscience, okay? There's conscience and there's conscience, 2 different spellings. We're talking about a voice viewed as acting as a guide to righteous or rightness or wrongness of one's behavior. So when they talk about the traditions, they're always talking about the group. So the group conscience controls the agenda, controls the right and wrong behavior of the society. And if you're part of the group, you have the 12 steps, which is body, mind, and spirit, or body, mind. That controls the body and mind. The 12 traditions controls the group through the group conscience. And ladies and gentlemen, I last podcast I talked about who is the group conscience, and we all know that because it's the elder statesmen, it's the old timers, it's the ones that parrot the most, it's the ones that work the steps, work the traditions, know the concepts that are involved in the hierarchy of the pyramid. It's the trusted servants. That's group conscience. It's the controlling minority. Go to a meeting and you'll see exactly who the group conscience is. Now, getting back to tradition 4, they have, here's something really crazy. Okay, it's right in tradition 4. Over the years, every conceivable deviation from our 12 steps and traditions have been tried. Over the years, this was written in 1952, about 16 years after Bill and Bob met. That's 70 years ago. So they're talking about every conceivable deviation. They're talking about 70 years ago, they're not talking about any deviations, okay? So in other words, for 16 years, they did some trial and error. We're really only about maybe 10 years they did some trial and error. Here's another word, ladies and gentlemen. We saw that the group, exactly like the individual, so they're comparing the group just like the individual, must. There's another must. Remember I told you about, there's no must in AA. Must eventually conform to whatever tested principles would guarantee survival. There's another conform. I posted some things about obedience and conformity. There's no obedience. You have to obey and you have to conform. Now, autonomy, the definition, existing or acting separately from other people, having the power or right to govern itself, responding, reacting, or developing independently of the whole. It just got done telling us that if it affects any other group or AA as a whole, so how can it be autonomous? Let's go a little deeper. Here we go. No group, regional committee, or individual should ever take any action that might greatly affect AA as a whole without conferring with the trustees of the General Service Board on our common welfare. Do you know who the trustees are? Do you know who these 21 trustees are that are at the top of the AA pyramid in the General Service Board? Do you know the trustees? You can look it up. You could probably Google it and find the trustees. And we're going to talk about how much they get paid, how much money is paid out to all the employees of Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's see, no other authority than its own conscience. But remember, group conscience, we asked the trustees over deviation under grace of God. It's always under the grace of God has brought us to where we are standing today. It's always under the grace of God. There's no such thing as separation of church and state. Okay. Remember, the courts send the people to the religion of Alcoholics Anonymous. And yes, it's a religion. Well, I think we're going to just stop there. You know, just remember, there's still words like conform in here. And remember group conscience, what group conscience is. And the other conscience is spelled different, but it's the same conscience. One's conscience of right and wrong, the moral right and wrong that we understand. And the other conscious is being awake. So I would just advise everybody to be conscious of what's going on in your group, in Alcoholics Anonymous, in the pyramid structure of AA. Be awake. Don't be asleep. Stay tuned for tradition 5, 6, 7, and 8 with Joey C and myself coming up. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Take care, everybody.